Alabama is back on track, but a playoff game looms. Now, Alabama enters its second bye week this week, and it could not come at a better time. I mean, this is the perfect time for Alabama to have a bye week because they were able to get through the first 3-game stretch, had some good performances, had some bad performances, had their best performance in the final game leading in to the first bye week that they had in week 4. That was against Wisconsin. They go into the bye week. They come out of the bye week, and they play their best first half of the season against Georgia. And then it's been a bit of a roller coaster, right? You beat Georgia in what was a remarkable game, and they lose to Vandy for the first time in 40 years. We know that Vandy team's a solid team, but they still lost the game. They overcame a ton of self-inflicted mistakes. They beat South Carolina, but it should have been far more convincing than it was. There were a ton of mistakes made against Tennessee that led to their second loss, and they completely dominated a really overrated Missouri team, but still a team that at the time is ranked in the top 25, a team that at the time had just one loss. So Alabama, you just beat a ranked team. You just shut out your first SEC opponent since 2020. You just put up nearly 500 yards of total offense. I think you got to feel pretty good about it. And yet there's still a lot of people that are really mad. I'm not sure why, but goodness gracious, the bar is high in Tuscaloosa. Take it and feel good about it. This was a convincing and dominant victory. But here's what was great about this. More than anything else, I am most optimistic about what I've seen from Alabama's rushing attack. They finished with 271 rushing yards. That was just the second time this year where they broke that 200-yard rushing barrier. And they did have 334 in week 1 against Western Kentucky, but against Power 5 competition and a group that's pretty dang good in the front 7 defensively, to rush for 271, you got to feel great about. I love how they distributed the ball in the ball carriers too. Haynes finished with 8 carries and 79 yards. Jam Miller had 11 carries for 48. Milroe had 9 attempts when you remove sacks for about 61. And even the third string back, Richard Young, who looks healthy again, he goes for a 62-yard scamper there in garbage time. The one area where I want to see continued growth, and I think it's an opportunity now to look in the mirror here heading into the bye week and assess, all right, how can we make Jalen Milroe more comfortable? How can we get Jalen Milroe back to playing the way he played between Wisconsin and Vandy? Because that 3-game stretch was a really good version of Jalen Milroe. Now, he was fine in this past weekend's game. 16-26, 215. The big thing, 0 turnovers, 0 interceptions. His first 0 turnover game since September. That was massive. But there still were a handful of missed throws. And if you look where things have gone in the passing game. Now, 3-week stretch, like I told you. Off-target percentage depends a little bit on how far you're pushing the ball downfield. So the more you push the ball downfield, the more likely your off-target percentage is going to go up just a little bit. So it doesn't tell you everything you need to know, but since he's running the same offense, I think it's fair to take a 3-game stretch against a 3-game stretch. Wisconsin, Jalen Milroe's off-target percentage was 6%. Against Georgia, it was 3%. Against Vandy, it was 4%. Y'all, those 3 games, and I know he lost, and Alabama lost against Vanderbilt, but like he was on the mark throwing the football. Very accurate in those 3 performances, 6, 3, and 4 respectively in game 3, 4, and 5. But the last 3 in games 6, 7, and 8, it hasn't been nearly as good from an accuracy standpoint. 14% off target against South Carolina, 19% off target against Tennessee, and 19% off target against Missouri. So you got to find a way here in this bye week to get him back on track, get him more comfortable in his fundamentals, and get him feeling a little bit better about where his feet are as he's going through the progressions. Now, he did have one where he slipped this past weekend, which caused it to be a little inaccurate, but his feet have been a little bit all over the place the last couple of weeks. But hey, that's what the bye week's for, focusing on your own fundamentals. You're not preparing for an opponent. You can look within, and maybe they can do what they did last year with Jalen Milroe. Obviously, different staff, but Jalen Milroe from week 1 through the last week of October was pretty up and down. But from the LSU game on, that was after the bye week, from the LSU game on, that 4 or 5 game stretch from LSU to Georgia, he played as well as anybody in college football. So if history is any indicator, Jalen Milroe will come out of this bye week playing really high-level football. The one other thing I want to bring attention to in this game, a lot of people have said, well, Kalen DeBoer, he's not a guy that's going to get in people's faces. That is just completely inaccurate, okay? And all I have to do is point to one example. Kalen DeBoer called a timeout late in the game to preserve a shutout, which was massive. They have a sideline just go absolutely berserk after they stop Missouri on the 4th and goal. And then a little later in the game, the second string offense is on the field. Looks like they're getting ready to run the clock. Well, DeBoer saw something from one of his offensive linemen that he didn't love, and he absolutely wore him out during a timeout. So that, I think, is also something that people need to make note of. Like, Kalen DeBoer is coaching hard. Just because he's got a little bit more of approachable demeanor in the press conferences doesn't mean he's not a guy that will absolutely get after you, both on the field and behind closed doors. So, Bama, great performance. Feel great about it. Hope get a little more consistent from the passing game, but their best football, I think, could be in front of them if they can come out of the bye week breathing some fire.